appears that it's time to start our January 9th meeting of the City of Eureka Planning Commission. So welcome to those who are here from on staff and those who are with us online. And welcome to all my collegial commissioners. Why don't we start with roll call, please?
Commissioner Mayor?
Present. Sorry.
Commissioner Lazar?
Here.
Commissioner Freitas?
Here.
Commissioner Kraft?
Here.
And Commissioner Benson?
Present. Okay, why don't we have the salute to the flag, and I won't ask Meredith Mayer to do that. I'll do it today. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, our first order of business tonight is the election of officers per our bylaws for the coming year. And so this is a time when any commissioner can make nominations, and we can mix it up, and we can keep it the same. We could do just anything.
I would be interested in nominating our current chair to continue to serve if she is willing to do so.
Okay.
I would nominate our current vice chair as well to continue.
Any other nominations?
I would be happy to second both of those nominations, or one of them, if only one, or if we want to combine them. But yeah, I'm comfortable.
I have no other nominations to make. Do you? Okay. I guess that's what appears is that we have Meredith Mayer nominated to continue on as chair and Craig Benson to continue on as vice chair, but we need to memorialize that with a vote. So one at a time, Kristen, or together is fine?
You may do either, but if either of the nominees would like to abstain from the vote, then we probably should do it separately.
Okay, so let's.
But that's your choice. You can certainly vote for yourself.
Okay, let's first vote for the chair for 2023. All in favor of Meredith Mayer continuing on as chair, say aye.
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 Aye. Any noes? Any abstentions? Okay, so moved. And then let's vote on Craig Benson continuing on as vice chair of the Planning Commission for 2023. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Noes? Abstentions? Seeing none, it appears we've elected our officers for next year. So we'll continue in this mode.
I think we should have the chair give an acceptance speech.
You're so kind.
Joke.
Love it. Okay. Next order of business is the approval of the minutes of our last meeting. Hopefully all the commissioners have had a chance to take a look at them. Are there any, I'm ready to hear a motion to approve those minutes of our last meeting. And
I'll move that we approve the minutes.
I'll second.
it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion around those minutes? Any revisions to or corrections to those minutes? Seeing none, let us vote to approve the minutes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? None. So the meeting minutes are approved. Okay, this is the time of the Planning Commission meeting where the public has the opportunity to address the Planning Commission on any topics not on this evening's agenda. So if you are, let me start with anyone online. If there's anyone online who would like to speak to the Planning Commission on a topic not on tonight's agenda, you have the floor. Just unmute yourself and have at it. Okay, seeing nobody wishing to speak in the chambers. Anyone from the general public wishing to address the commission on an item not on the agenda? Appears not. So let us move on to continuation of public hearings is item F. Is there a staff report around this? Or are we moving right to G this evening?
There are no continued public hearings, so you would move on to the new public hearings.
Okay, so our first item then is the Humboldt Highness Cannabis Retail Facility, and it appears that we'll have a staff report on that, so go ahead. Thank you.
Hello, Commissioners. Thanks for having me. Melissa Smith, Assistant Planner. The project before you for consideration is the Humboldt Highness LLC Conditional Use Permit for Cannabis Retail Facility within an existing commercial building at 29 5th Street. Here is a bird's eye view of where the proposed project is located in the context of city limits. It's located in the north central portion of the city. Zooming in a bit closer, you'll see that the subject property is located slightly west of the downtown core area in the downtown west zone district. Zooming in closer yet, you'll see the subject property is located on the northern side of 5th Street or Highway 101 northbound, south of 4th Street, between A Street and B Street. The parcel is a 4,093 square foot interior lot that contains an existing 1,578 square foot one-story commercial building that was previously occupied by a restaurant. The subject property is surrounded by other commercial or mixed-use buildings. The parcel to the east is a vacant commercial building with a second-floor residential. Further west across B Street is another retail cannabis dispensary. The parcel to the west is another vacant commercial building, and further west is a martial arts studio and a mattress retail store. To the north across the alleyway is commercial lodging. And to the south across 5th Street is a mix of vacant buildings and other commercial uses, including 2 rental car businesses, a Stove retail store, and a copy center. And 1 block northeast of the property is Bayview Heights, a 51-unit veteran housing complex. An overview of the project. The proposed use is cannabis retail. To use 325 square feet of the facility as a retail storefront and 160 square feet of the facility as storage for the retail storefront. There was a recent update to the city's cannabis regulations, and no longer RFPs are required, or requests for proposals are no longer required for cannabis retail facilities, and anyone can now apply for a cannabis retail permit at any time. In the Downtown West Zone District, cannabis retail is allowed with a conditional use permit. The applicant has indicated that the remaining approximately 1,093 square foot of the facility will be used for general cannabis uses like cold water hash extraction, cannabis edible production, and additional packaging and processing activities, which are principally permitted uses in the Downtown West Zone, with no use permit required for general cannabis uses. General cannabis use is any use other than chemical extraction or retail. The conditional use permit before you today is only for the retail use, as all other proposed uses are principally permitted. Site improvements include 2 new walls, 1 separating the retail storefront from the retail storage and 1 creating an additional storage room. A new 6-foot tall security fence between the building and the western property line. 8 security cameras. And 1 exhaust fan and filter for odor control. No changes to the building footprint will be made. The existing fence along the 5th Street facing facade of the property was erected sometime between 2019 and 2021, and it was erected without permits and not in compliance with the city zoning regulations. A condition has been added requiring the removal of the fence prior to operation. Staff's recommendation is to hold a public hearing and adopt a resolution to find the project is exempt from CEQA under Section 15301, Class 1 existing facilities, and approving with conditions the conditional use permit. I have a suggested motion here, but I will stop screen sharing and allow for discussion. I believe that the applicant is here via Zoom.
Hello. Hi. I'm William Nathan.
Hello, William. This is I'm Craig Benson. Yeah, why don't we go ahead and give you time at this moment to make a statement or comments on this project for the Planning Commission.
Well,
Welcome.
Just wanted to thank Melissa as well for all the work she's been doing on it. And we just want to bring something into the community to help some other farms and, you know, try to help the area the best we can. And cannabis is something that has been around, and we need to be able to help the farmers and distribute it, and looking forward to that.
Okay, I'd like to turn it over to the commission now just to ask questions that they may have for Melissa Smith, our assistant planner, and for the applicant, since you are here. Do any of the commissioners have preliminary questions before we go in public comment?
I do have a quick one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Remind me, and I realize I should know this, but are dispensaries always conditionally permitted, or are they principally permitted in any of the city zones?
I don't have the code in front of me, so I know just off the top of my head that it is conditionally permitted in the downtown west. Do you know, are there any zones where cannabis retail is principally permitted?
I believe that they're all still conditionally permitted, but we'll double check and let you know if there's a different answer to that.
I have a couple of questions. My first is just having read the report, and thank you for writing a wonderful report and providing it to us in advance, about the historic review committee consultation on this building. So it is, I think 1900 is what it said, and so it does have some protections, but nothing's going to be altered about the outside of this building. Is that my?
I think that I'm presenting twice today, and there was another building that I think what you just said pertains to. From my recollection, there's no historic significance to the current building.
To this particular house?
Yeah, you may be referring to 1704 or
1017 4th Street.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I read them both. I may have made that mistake. My apologies. So that's good. That answers that question for me. And it's also was stated that it's at least 4/10 of a mile away from the Aldergrove School. And there's, if you could remind the commission, what's the distance that a cannabis dispensary or business has to be from a school?
600 feet.
600 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So here's my second question. Above Moore's Sleep World, there's a dance studio, and there's youths take dance classes up there. There's a big wooden floor and mirrors and a bar, and so there's a lot of very school age students going in there to study dance. Is that a consideration for this dispensary location, or is my information outdated? Perhaps I don't know what's happened since COVID. I'm speaking about a time past.
Yeah. So I guess where I pulled the pertinent information for that consideration from was from a GIS layer that we have that shows all the 600, all the radiuses within 600 feet of schools. And so that's why I considered Alder Point the closest school for that consideration. So I didn't take the dance academy into account.
And like I said, I don't know if it's still if classes are still happening currently there, and whether it's a current issue or not.
I believe that the 600-foot limitation is from public schools.
Right. I was just wondering. I was trying to speak to the spirit of that. If there's a place where there's classes going on that's informal education, is that something we need to take into consideration as a planning commission?
I would say no.
Okay. Thank you. Those were my questions. Any other questions from?
I guess just your point, the county rules talk about places where children congregate, but they make a point of like singling out that or clarifying that. So I think we do have to follow the letter of the code. But it is a use permit, so we always have latitude to consider anything that is unique to the site or potentially idiosyncratic about the project. So.
And maybe one other point on that too is it looks like the staff report is saying that any exterior modifications, including signage, will require design review. So that's another bite at the apple. I'm not sure what other, impacts we might be seeing for children. But that's another opportunity for it to be guided with that consideration.
That was a question I had. So we don't have signage proposed at this point.
No.
Thank you.
Move to public comments. If there's anyone from the general public, let's start in the House, in the chambers first. If there's public comment on this project, we are ready to hear you. Okay, seeing none, how about online? Is there anyone online who would like to speak to this? I see a hand raised.
BPT has their hand raised.
BPT, go ahead when you're ready.
Oh, thank you. This is Philip Beaudry. I'd like to note, in addition to the dance studio, there's a martial arts studio. Some old movie actor named Kenpo 5.0. That is maybe 2-3 doors down, and it is primarily frequented by children, my son included. I personally don't have a problem with dispensaries in the city. It's kind of like having a liquor store around, provided provided it remains safe, and generally the children passing in front of the place are not forced to inhale any scents that they ought not be exposed to. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else from the general public like to comment on this project? Okay, I turn it back over to the commission for discussions.
I don't
go ahead.
don't have a big need to discuss a lot. This isn't really here nor there for our decision tonight, but just a bit of coaching for the applicant that the DCC has really been emphasizing cameras wherever cannabis is stored or moved. So you might want to review your plan and make sure that every square foot, like even the smallest obstruction, has been gotten written up. So at least what I'm looking at here looks like there's not a camera in the storage facility.
Okay, we can add cameras for sure. Thank you.
So
for that
I'm
recommendation.
not proposing to make that a condition of our support. Just note that somebody will make you do it.
I'd be curious to hear from the applicant. Have you had any discussions regarding the Humboldt Highness Cannabis Retail Facility with the martial arts studio or with the
I
dance studio?
haven't. We're in the slow process of doing it. So we're taking our time, and we will definitely make sure that no children would be impacted. We would have a can filter to take any smells away. We don't plan on having any smoking lounges there. So definitely the kids, will definitely be sheltered from it. We won't make it appealing to kids. The sign will be a good sign, and the name, I'm not sure yet. So I'm not sure what name we're going to use, but.
Okay, thank you. I guess I just have this slight little discomfort around places where children congregate, and I realize I understand from Principal Planner Getz that we're really looking at public schools, specifically. But I just, I would be much more comfortable, I have to say, if there had been discussion either with city staff and these businesses that cater to children, and or the applicant had those conversations. I feel a lot clearer, and my conscience would be clearer about voting for this, voting this in. Go ahead, Melissa Smith.
I did just want to comment. So across B Street very close to, only 2 parcels away, is another dispensary, and there are 4 other cannabis dispensaries located within the downtown west zone. And so that was maybe why that information kind of got, I don't want to say overlooked, but we kind of looked at the density of cannabis retail dispensaries in this area and how they've been previously approved. So.
Or should we assume that there haven't been complaints from those businesses that cater to children around the pre-existing cannabis facilities to date?
Not to my knowledge, but I don't know if we would receive those if there were.
In particular, the heart of Humboldt. That's, I believe, what you're referring to, Roy Gomez. So that's 250 feet versus 150 feet, as I measure it, from the Sleep World property. So there's there right here. So there has already been kind of an invasion of sorts in recent years,
And a vetting, perhaps.
Well, we don't seem to have that knowledge yet as to whether there's been complaints or anything like that, unless anyone's prepared to say. Has there been a complaint on any dispensary, for that matter, that isn't in operation?
Not that we're aware of.
Yeah.
Other commissioner comments or discussion?
I own a brewery in McKinleyville, and behind us, adjacent, is a preschool. And those 2 businesses have nothing to do with each other, nor is that who we're marketing to. So I don't think that you would see any crossover. There should be any real concern about kids seeing a cannabis sign. I think it's illegal in the state, and I think especially in this county, recognizing and kind of normalizing cannabis in the same way we normalize alcohol use or tobacco use in that same realm. So I don't see an issue with it.
Any other comments?
I guess I just was curious as if there's and Meredith could probably speak to this, however painfully. But as I understand it from friends of mine who have started drinking establishments, when you sign up to get a liquor license, you're essentially becoming the cop for the neighborhood, because it's your problem when somebody gets in a fight or something happens within the perimeter of your area that you operate. I don't believe the DCC has gotten to that point when it comes to cannabis licensing, though it is ultimately probably coming. But it'd be nice if we had things like that where an applicant has a responsibility to be, and especially since there are 2 dispensaries in close proximity, that they can be kind of working in tandem to make sure the neighborhood is,
Yeah.
As the code's written for the city, there are requirements, and I think it's complaint driven. So if there were complaints, then that would immediately cause issue with the license they're holding. I think that probably you guys could speak to that more clearly, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I think it's all complaint driven, so that would bring it up right away if there was issues.
Yeah, so I think that kind of shows how there is a forum for if there problems emerge, ultimately we could be looking at this project in the future if that proved problematic. But there's a pathway for elevating it, maybe, if that gives you any comfort, Greg.
Okay.
I can offer a couple of observations on that. Within the dispensary, you have to be the cop kinds of rules about daily limits and keeping anybody under 21 out unless they have a medical card, in which case it's 18. I would say when it comes to kind of being the policing the neighborhood, cannabis operations are very much like any other business. We work with our neighbors, and we're much more likely to call the cops than they are to come see us, for the same reason that anybody in downtown. Same reasons that anybody in downtown Eureka does. So that, as much as I see cannabis staff and planning staff and this group once a month, we talk to the police a lot more often. And it's never from within our own borders. It's always coming in. But I would say to the applicant, that's what Commissioner Lazard is offering is really a good thing in the spirit and kind of the co-opetition, get together with those neighbors of various kinds and try to make the neighborhood as good as you can.
I support that idea.
And I guess one final note, since we're all just kind of, sharing reflections on the concern, is I'm almost positive this had a notice that went out to occupants, nearby occupants and owners. And it looks like Sleep World is close enough that it probably made the 100-foot radius, I would guess. I don't know if you can speak to that.
I did not send out the notice, but I know that the notice does get sent out to the 300-foot radius. Isn't it 300 or 100? 300-foot radius. So they're within that.
Okay, perfect. So at least the property owner, if not the site occupant, was given notice that this hearing was happening. If they had a concern for their tenant, they would have the opportunity to come and speak to that.
Thank you, Commissioners, for all your comments and questions. Assistant Planner Smith, would you bring up the recommended motion for us, please? And we'd like to hear somebody move forward with it. This would be the appropriate time.
I'll do it. I move the Planning Commission adopt a resolution determining the project is exempt from CEQA and conditionally approving the Humboldt Highness Cannabis Retail Facility at 29 5th Street, APN 001-072-008.
I'll second.
The motion has been made and seconded, so let's put it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? None. Abstentions? None. The motion passes. Congratulations, Humboldt Cannabis Retail Facility.
Well, thank you very much, and we'll definitely do everything to make it safe, talk to the neighbors, and we really appreciate all your guys' support, and thank you so much, Melissa, and everybody else. Thank you.
You bet. Okay, moving on to the next item is Jack in the Box on 4th Street, and it's in design review. And do we have a staff report for that one as well?
Good evening, Commissioners. Before you is an application from Cliff Sorrell, MBH Architects, proposing modifications of a previously approved design review for a drive-through restaurant at the northeast corner of 4th and Y Streets, adjacent to Target. Here's the general project location. On this slide, the Target parcel is outlined in yellow, and the area for the proposed restaurant is outlined in red. On December 13th, 2021, design review for an unidentified 2-lane drive-through fast food restaurant with associated parking, landscaping, and patio was originally approved by the Planning Commission, along with the required conditional use and coastal development permits. Since then, the applicant has identified the tenant as Jack in the Box and is proposing a considerably smaller restaurant structure with associated parking, landscaping, drive-through trellis, patio, lighting, and signage. The restaurant will be drive-through and walk-up only. There is no proposed interior access for customers. To accommodate the restaurant, a minor subdivision was approved for the division of the Target parcel into 2 parcels. The resulting restaurant parcel will be 0.78 acres, or 33,977 square feet. The modification will reduce the footprint of the restaurant building from 2,800 square feet to 1,334 square feet, change the facades of the building, and add signs. Here's the site plan showing the new parcel and the general site layout, including the 2-lane drive-through, restaurant location, and parking. 20 off-street parking spaces are required, including 7 spaces for the restaurant with at least one ADA accessible space and 13 spaces for Target. In total, 24 spaces are provided, including 2 ADA accessible spaces. Electric vehicle spaces will be provided if required by the building code. The exterior of the restaurant building is designed to match the look of Target and will use the same or very similar materials, roofline, trim, and paint. The proposed restaurant is approximately 1,334 square feet in size and 34.75 feet in height. The front employee entrance of the building, or the north elevation facing the Target Street parking lot, will have a large clear glass window and an employee door with side light window, both with frosted glazing, and a clear glass transom window inside dark brown anodized window frames. There is also a light brown metal door on the north side closer to the drive-through canopy, which will be used for product deliveries. A stained wood awning will be located over the sidewalk, roofed with gray composite shingles, and supported by stone veneer columns. Stone veneer accents are found throughout all of the building facades, along with painted plaster with a rough sand finish. The rear or south elevation of the building facing Highway 101 will be similar to the front, utilizing the same materials, roofline, and roofing materials. The south side will have the 2 drive-up windows, one for ordering and payment, and one for food pickup. Both with frosted glazing and dark bronze anodized aluminum frames. The drive-through will be covered by a stained wood trellis supported by stone veneer columns. On the east side, another glass employee door and a walk-up window are proposed, both with frosted glazing and dark bronze anodized aluminum frames. A stained wood awning will be located over the sidewalk, roofed with gray composite shingles and supported by stone veneer columns, similar to the one proposed on the north elevation. There is a raised parapet area on the east side of the building, which will be trimmed in wood and roofed with gray composite shingles. The east elevation is also the drive-through exit. The west elevation facing Y Street is similar to the other elevations with stone veneer accents and painted plaster. Finally, shielded light fixtures are proposed for all sides of the building and roof line. Regarding signs, the application for the proposed modification was received prior to a recent update to the city's sign regulations for the coastal zone and is therefore subject to the earlier sign standards. 3 square feet of signage are allowed for every foot of the lot's street frontage. The site is a corner lot with a combined total square footage of 373.55 feet of street frontage on 4th and Y Streets, allowing for a total of 1,121 square feet of signage on the property. As described in the staff report, 20 signs are proposed, totaling 437 square feet, or approximately 39% of the allowed signage for the parcel. The proposed signage meets the size and sighting limitations contained in Eureka Municipal Code Section 10-5.1704. Here's the landscaping plan, which includes the general location of the proposed monument sign. The monument sign will have an internally illuminated Jack-in-the-Box logo on a white background. The overall size is 9 feet by 7 feet and is similar in size and design to the Target monument sign that is also adjacent to Highway 101. There are no landscape requirements for new structures in the CS Zone District. However, a robust landscaping plan is being proposed. The plants, as proposed, are all appropriate with the exception of Australian tea tree, which is listed as an invasive species on the California Invasive Plant Council's list. The applicant has agreed to replace all 16 5-gallon Australian tea trees with similarly sized trees or shrubs of a species native to Eureka as listed by the California Native Plant Society. Overall, the proposed development as modified, including the proposed restaurant building, parking, landscaping, drive-through trellis, patio, lighting, and signage, will be harmonious with its surroundings and will not have an adverse effect on the value of properties within the vicinity. As a result, staff believes the necessary findings, as mentioned above, can be made to approve the site plan and architectural review. There was an error on the agenda and resolution stating that the project was exempt from CEQA under Section 15332, Class 32 infill development. However, the project has already been found exempt from CEQA under Section 15332 on December 13th, 2021, when design review for the unidentified two-lane drive-through fast food restaurant was originally approved by the Planning Commission, along with the required conditional use and coastal development permits. Therefore, a corrected resolution has been provided, and staff recommends the Planning Commission adopt the resolution determining the project has already been found exempt from CEQA under Section 15332, Class 32 infill development projects, and approve with conditions. When you're ready, I'll put the suggested motion, myself as well the principal planners, and I believe the applicant is here, and we're available for questions.
Thank you very much, Senior Planner Savage, for that report. Before, I'd like to start with just initial questions from the commission, and then we will go to the public, and then we will come back to the commission.
Can you confirm, I was looking at our December decision. It looked like on the site plan we received at that time, it was a 2,800 square foot building in the location where this is proposed?
That's correct. It's a much smaller structure.
1,334 square feet.
Yes.
Is there any plans to occupy because it's a one-story, both were one-story buildings, right? I can't remember the prior one, but.
Correct.
Yeah. So with the additional area on the parcel that won't be occupied by building footprint, is there anything forecast for that? It looks like it's shifting to the east maybe, or the north, something like that.
They kept the patio, and it looks like a lot of the space was, or at least some of the space was taken up by the more robust landscaping plan that they proposed.
No changes to the circulation plan, though, as far as the drive-through area or the lanes or as far as you can tell?
The drive-through lanes look the same.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I have one question regarding there being any kind of pedestrian crossing in the drive-through. Could you bring back up the landscape plan? It seemed that was the best visual.
It's the one with the Jack-in-the-Box sign.
Yeah, so zooming into that, looking at the ingress, which is 2 lanes, and the egress, which is a single lane, it looks like some kind of a sidewalk goes by there. Is that what I'm seeing? Is that a place where pedestrians would cross the lane of traffic of people being served by a vehicle? Or let me just ask a question more generally. How can people get here by foot, and how can they cross the traffic that is either going in or leaving the site?
There's a walk-up window on the, I think, did we say that was the east side?
Mm-hmm.
And so you would park in the parking lot and walk up where you see the patio area, right there where Kristen's pointing, and go to the walk-up window from there. And the same thing, walk back to your car afterwards.
My question is more about pedestrians or bicyclists, someone other than someone who drives in a car and parks in one of those spaces. How might they get to use this restaurant?
Looks like there's sidewalks along 4th Street, but they terminate basically where the exit from Target is. So
seems they have to walk across a parking lot to.
Yeah, they don't. There's no pedestrian infrastructure, as far as I can tell, at a certain point.
Well, what is that little path by the trash enclosure?
I think that is the pathway to the parking lot from there.
Yeah, it looks like that might come from the street, whatever street that is.
From Y Street, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you could potentially walk from Y Street with a sidewalk, and come in through that little path. You'd have to cross the drive-through line, but the cars would be stopped, so it probably wouldn't be unsafe if you wanted to come around that way.
But there's not a formal crosswalk that's painted white or yellow or
No.
anything formal. Okay.
I'm noticing this comment from CRTP is raising concerns about the CEQA exemption based on vehicle trips. Was that discussed with the engineering department at all? Does that raise any concerns for staff?
So this was, the CEQA for this was already approved at the last meeting when the use permit and the coastal development permit and design review for the undefined restaurant were approved. The traffic division would have looked at potential traffic issues along with Caltrans prior to that. So there's no additional concerns raised just by making the changes to the facade and using the slightly smaller building.
And do you think it'd be safe to maybe even say that, given that the footprint is smaller, it might have less capacity and, create less trips, or at least substantially similar trips to what we already approved?
I don't know that we would need to do that because it already has been approved at the higher level. And because it is now a lesser level, it would still be covered by that previous analysis.
Okay, thank you.
I guess to that point, one of my comments was going to be, should we move to approve that in the resolution? Well, I note that we, as a body, did make a determination for the earlier incarnation of this project. I think we have to also in our resolution, should we choose to approve it, make the determination that further environmental review is not needed because of the minor nature of the changes and the likely reduction, like Tila was saying, in potential result of the reduced scale of the project.
So if I could just add, theoretically, design review as it is undertaken by the city in the coastal zone is not subject to CEQA.
But we are doing a use permit modification,
It
though.
just gets, actually we're not.
No?
Design review is a separate project, standalone from the use permit.
But isn't a use permit required for the drive-through?
The use permit is required for the use, yes, but not for the appearance of the drive-through. You're looking at the appearance of the site and the drive-through this evening. So that the way that the city has undertaken CEQA for design review in the coastal zone in the past is that it is not subject to CEQA because neither the design review committee nor the planning commission has the authority to make substantial changes to the appearance, and because there are no objective design guidelines.
Okay, so this is a design review amendment, but not a use permit amendment.
Correct.
Okay. Actually, I have one other question for staff. What if we wanted to instead require this site to house a drive-through grocery store or a Panda Express? What are the chances of us being able to condition the project to require that?
Before you tonight is the modification of the design review. So it's the appearance of both the building and the site, as well as the signs.
Okay, so we can't get a Sonic
We can't get a Sonic.
or a Panda Express.
No.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure.
Thank you for clarifying that for sure.
The choices of what type of use and or once a drive-through is decided, what exactly that drive-through restaurant business will be is up to the property owner.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
And to her point, the city is not recruiting actively this business to enter the city limits.
Generally, the city doesn't know, and we did not on this one.
Thank you.
Thank you for those fine points, fellow commissioners. Let us hear from the owner and applicant, and then we'll hear from the general public. Does the owner wish to address the commission at this time? Or applicant's representative? It appears not, so let's open it up first to general public online, and I do see a hand up, BPT. think that was Philip, if I heard correctly last time.
Yes.
Go ahead if you wish to speak. If your hand up is just a relic from the last time you spoke, you can take it down.
Nope, just double mute. Thank you.
Okay.
First time caller, first time listener, and impressed with the astute commentary from our commissioners. Thank you very much. Also, a very nice presentation from staff. I called in today because of this offering, and I could care less about yet another, box fast food store, but I could care more about the large expanses of parking lots that are spreading out our city, increasing the city infrastructure costs to maintain our beautiful town. And I see this sort of densification as, albeit with a national chain box store or fast food restaurant, that it's taking up some of the parking lot space seems to me a good thing. I very much appreciate it, and I must admit my ignorance in terms of planning considerations. So all with a grain of salt, of course, and with your knowledge to temper my random thoughts. I, as a newly minted traffic safety commissioner, I am very concerned about the ability for pedestrians to access all of the resources that we have in the city. And I've very much appreciated the astute question about access for those who come walking or biking. I would be excited to see something like a continuous sidewalk, which does indicate to drivers that they are entering a human space, as opposed to crosswalks, which indicate to drivers that humans may enter their driving space. Next point, parking lots really have no value. They are a drain. I mean, obviously people need to drive, they need places to park, but we find most of our parking lots are vastly underused, even on our busiest shopping days of the year, the Black Fridays and the like. So to see a potential for sales tax revenue and property tax revenue in this parking lot, which I often see quite vacant, seems a good thing. I do like the densification of the area, and the large sign that does not meet current standards, I understand it flew under the it got in before the toll gate dropped. Seems unfortunate to me, but it is what it is, I suppose. I look forward to your deliberations, and thank you for the time.
Thank you for your comments, sir. I'd like to move it to members of the public in the chamber. Anyone wish to speak? Okay. Seeing none, back to the commissioners. And could we bring up the resolution? Could also, Senior Planner Savage.
Well, I just wanted to agree with the commenter who just spoke. I completely agree that, I go to Target all the time. I live nearby, and I've never seen it full. It's a huge, huge expanse of concrete. I don't think that this will impact parking for Target in any way. And it will be nice to have another storefront kind of breaking up, the visual scene when you come into town. This is a pretty, important intersection for people coming into the city. We want nice things here, an investment in sort of the gateway into Eureka. I'm glad they're doing additional landscaping. I'm not necessarily thrilled that it's a Jack in the Box, but it might not be a Jack in the Box forever. So, I think on the whole, I'm supportive of the project.
Other commissioners wish to comment?
I have a question for staff. So let's say that it's not a Jack in the Box forever, and some more beloved restaurant wishes to take up shop would there be any requirement for additional review by anyone other than the building permits?
The conditional use permit for drive-through will remain with the property, but there could be additional hoops that they would need to jump through, like if they expanded the size or,
Let's say they just want to colonize the footprint of what was already permitted as of tonight.
I think another one could just step right in because the conditional use permit would still be good for the 2-lane drive-through. Correct?
I believe the exception to that would be if they made certain changes to the signage,
Right.
they might need to have design review again.
But if they presumably put all their signs in the spots where Jack in the Box put their signs and just change the copy, it would just be a building permit process for tenant improvements and things.
That would be correct, yes. At least under the current regulations.
Okay. Thanks. I guess one comment I had was, it seems like there could. Do we have a slide that shows the walk-up window? Because I'm struggling to find it in the staff report. Is that the west or the east or the north elevation? Do we know? Oh, east. There it is. Yeah. Okay. So there. Okay. So it's closest to Target. It's on the Target side of the building. What about a sidewalk lateral from the? If you pull up the site plan, I think we can see a little closer. The pedestrian access comes from V Street or Y Street. What about along that? There is sidewalk on the south side of where all the landscaping is. I'm just saying, at the bottom of the site plan, there's a sidewalk there. It terminates right where the exit aisle from the Target is. But what about a lateral to the eastern elevation through that landscaped area from the sidewalk? I think, to me, as a pedestrian, we know people are going to be queued waiting to pick up their order because they're driving in from the west, and they could cross the exit lane from the drive-through to the walk-up window where it's located. To me, that would be a much more logical way to get there without trying to negotiate the beginning of the drive-through where people are going to be coming in hot. Probably so right there you have to cross the place where people are coming. The existing is on the west side, right? That's the pedestrian access. No. Yeah. So I'm just thinking, it's hard to describe without a pointer or whatever. But where the Jack in the Box signal or it's just to the east of that. Why not have coming through that landscaped area a lateral from the existing sidewalk to the walk-up window? That seems to me a better design.
Do you mean from the landscaping on the south? On the south.
Southish, yeah.
So would people
Because
have to
they
go
would be
through the?
they would still be crossing the drive-through.
Yeah, they'd have to go through
But
the
they'd
drive-through
be
aisle.
crossing it where people are queued up and can't leave until they get their order, and it would be putting them right where the walk-up window is. If I'm seeing the elevation correctly.
So it'd be like in front. So if you're in a car, you're driving in front of the window, you make your order, you're paying, so you're stopped, and then right in front of your car before you drive away would be a little crosswalk.
Yeah.
That maybe could work as long as the traffic engineers don't think that's terrible.
I mean, I kind of showed it on here, but the red is the sidewalk that exists, and the building. This is the old building, but why not have something cutting over here from the sidewalk that's on the south side? That to me seems like a better resource for someone who's getting there by foot, whoever that might be.
So we now have a Google Map image showing the sidewalk.
Yeah, there's your sidewalk. So in that area where the parking spaces is going to be the drive-through, in that. So there's somebody walking down the street, and then they cut over to the east of where all the storage containers are, but before you turn, yeah. So before you can't round that corner as a pedestrian. That's the end of your universe. So in that area, to me, would be a logical place to put the sidewalk to the walk-up facility.
Right. Principal Planner Getz, what's the best course of action for the Planning Commission to add a use or a condition like that to, or a consideration like that?
I would encourage the commission, if they want to add that, to do it as not a requirement for the project, because I would be concerned that Caltrans might have some issues with a public walkway there. They could be fine with it, but I would hate for the applicant to have to come back if Caltrans said no. So if the commission wanted to suggest, you can always do that. You can recommend that they consult with Caltrans, or you could do some sort of an addition to the motion saying that you'd like to have a walkway there, provided that Caltrans can allow it.
And to be clear, it's not it would be essentially a crosswalk through the exit aisle to the walk-up window. I think that would be the most precise way to describe it.
Well, do you want to take a crack at a motion then?
Yeah, and I guess I'll do that with the language of, so I guess I'll just do the whole enchilada and then tack it on. I move the Planning Commission adopt a resolution determining the project has already been found exempt from CEQA and that the design review is not subject to further CEQA, and conditionally approving modification of design review for the restaurant at 2525 4th Street, APN 002-201-008, with the added condition, and I'll describe the language of it, that a crosswalk be extended from the existing public sidewalk along 4th Street to the walk-up window on the eastern side of the building, unless it can't be supported by the Department of Caltrans, California Department of Transportation. There you go.
Do we have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
I like that, the idea of putting this idea of having a crosswalk across the egress lane for pedestrians to come from the existing sidewalk into the space. I like that very much. I think that would be a good benefit if it were indeed possible for Caltrans to approve that. I think you used the word condition, might support a motion that said recommendation or consideration, that maybe that language be softened a little bit.
Just to be clear, I did create a kill switch.
Caveat.
Yeah. So if they can demonstrate that they can't get approval from Caltrans, then they don't have to comply with that condition.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Understood. Any further discussion from the commission? Okay, let's put this to a vote. Can we just can we have a rereading of that, of the motion, just one time with the addition before we vote on it? Did anyone catch that?
Give it a try here. So the Planning Commission is moving to adopt a resolution determining the project is exempt from CEQA under 15332 Class 32 Infill Development Project as determined at their December 13th, 2022 meeting. And they are moving to approve the project with the additional condition that a crosswalk be extended to the existing public sidewalk on 4th Street to the walk-up window unless that cannot be supported by Caltrans.
And does that fit your intent, motioner?
I think there was one other thing about and the project as designed will not be subject to CEQA ongoing. Does that matter?
Yeah, it was more just noting that the use permit was, or the prior action made a determination it was exempt, and the new action is not subject to further environmental review, the design review.
Are all the commissioners clear on what we're voting on? Okay, let's put it to the vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Hi.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? None. Motion carries.
Commissioner Benson, we have a couple of requests from this end of the table for a 5-minute break.
Okay, the commission's going to take a 5-minute break. Thank you. We'll be back shortly. Commissioners and staff ready to resume? Or do you need another minute? Okay, let's restart then, reconvene. Okay, the next item on our agenda is item I2, general plan conformance review for 1017th 4th Street. Where's that? Yep. Do we have a staff report on that tonight as well? There
Yes.
it is right in front of me. Okay, go ahead. We'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Commissioners. So the project for your consideration now is the general plan conformance review for the County of Humboldt's acquisition of the property at 1017 4th Street and the demolition of the existing structure on site. Here's a bird's eye view of the proposed project location in the context of city limits. Again, in the north central portion of the city. Zooming in closer, you'll see that the subject property is north of the Highway 101 corridor, or 4th and 5th Street, and west of Myrtle Avenue in the eastern part of the downtown core area. Zooming in closer yet, you'll see the subject property is an interior lot
Assistant
located.
Planner Smith, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you for just 1 second. I need to stop your presentation so we can unmute.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Do you want me
Continue.
to repeat myself?
Okay. Continue.
Okay, so zooming in closer yet, you'll see the subject property is an interior lot located on the north side of 4th Street between L Street and K Street. The County of Humboldt is proposing to acquire the subject property and demolish the existing structure. And per California Government Code 65402, the county is required prior to acquisition to request the determination from the city as to conformity of the proposed project's location, purpose, and extent with the city's general plan. The structure on site is a single-family home that is vacant and boarded. And although specific development is unknown at this time, the county has indicated the parcel will be used for some type of municipal office facility, but the footprint, height, and configuration is still unknown. The county is exempt from the city's zoning regulations, so it is important to note that an additional general plan conformance review will be required by California Government Code 65402 prior to construction of any facility, allowing the city a future opportunity to determine general plan conformance if a facility is proposed. The city has 40 days to provide report of general plan conformance, and the 40-day reporting period concludes on January 22nd. The county is not bound by the city's determination, and the county does not have to adhere to any city recommendations. In 2019, another general plan conformance review was conducted for a previously proposed facility on the site and adjacent parcels, and at that time, a cultural resource survey was conducted. The report stated the subject parcel is not eligible as a state or national historical resource, but the parcel is identified in the Green Book as eligible for the local Register of Historic Places. But the owner opted out of having the property included in the local Register of Historic Places. The Cultural Resource Survey recommended measures if demolition were to occur, including having a tribal cultural monitor present for any ground disturbing activity, following inadvertent discovery protocol, prior to demolition, conducting a detailed architectural documentation to the standards of the Secretary of the Interior, and salvaging any historical materials. And it's important to note the project would be more consistent with the general plan if these recommendations were followed. As stated before, although specific parameters of what will be developed on the site are unknown at this time, the county has committed that the parcel will not be used for a parking lot. Land Use Policy 1.3 supports developing street frontages with buildings instead of parking lots. And Mobility Policy 5.4 discourages parking lots along major commercial and high pedestrian frontages. Since the county has committed that this parcel will not be used for a surface parking lot, the project can be found consistent with these policies. On to land use policies. Land use goal 1 aims to thoughtfully advance new prospects for growth and economic vitality. Land use policy 2.1 supports use of core area parcels for government facilities and services consolidated into a regional center. Other facilities like the courthouse, the jail, the public defender's office, city hall are all located within 2 blocks of the subject parcel, and the county has indicated the site will be used for some type of municipal office facility. Land use policy 6.2 supports infill or reuse of vacant or underutilized sites to accommodate new growth and internal densification. The structure is a vacant and the site is underutilized, and the existing building does not meet minimum standards for site coverage or floor area ratio, with demolition allowing an opportunity for new development that meets density standards. The acquisition and demolition is consistent with these land use goals and policies. As stated before, although the parcel was never added to the local register of historic places, it is listed in the Green Book as eligible, and potentially eligible historic resources are applicable to historic preservation policies of the general plan. Historic and Cultural Preservation Policy 1.1 encourages the preservation of historically significant buildings, and the project as proposed is inconsistent with this policy. If recommendations from the Cultural Resource Survey of architectural documentation and salvaging of historic materials were adhered to, the project could be found consistent with this policy. HCP Policy 1.4 discourages demolition of a historic resource and only as a last resort, permitted if rehabilitation is not feasible or if public benefit of demolition outweighs the loss of the structure. Because the exact parameters of future development are unknown, staff is unable to conclude that public benefit of demolition outweighs the loss of the structure, and regardless if recommendations made in the Cultural Resource Report were followed, the project cannot be found consistent with Policy HCP 1.4. On to housing element policies. Housing element policy 5.3 supports the retention of existing affordable rental housing and encourages the replacement of lost housing units. Policy 5.5 supports proactive measures to prevent loss of low-income housing through neglect. The project as proposed is inconsistent with both applicable housing element policies, but if the county considered dedication of a parcel for housing or other strategies to replace the lost housing unit, the complete loss of an affordable housing unit to neglect would be avoided, and consistency with these policies could be found. 5 recommendations have been identified that would bring the proposed project more in conformance with the 2040 general plan. Number 1, dedicating land for replacement housing or implementing of an alternative strategy to offset loss of one affordable housing unit. Number 2, prior to demolition, conducting highly detailed architectural documentation of the building consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards for architectural documentation. Number 3, implementing measures to salvage historic building materials, which can be reused instead of taken to a landfill, and ensuring that the salvaging of the building is conducted by qualified contractors in whole building recycling, including removal and salvage of historic materials. Number 4, conducting tribal monitoring for all ground disturbing activities. And number 5, including inadvertent discovery protocol in construction documents and initiating upon any archaeological findings discovered during ground disturbance. The project as proposed is consistent with half of the applicable goals and policies and inconsistent with the other half. There we go. If the county were to adhere to the recommendations made in the Cultural Resource Survey, as well as dedicate a parcel of land or develop an alternate strategy to offset the loss of one housing unit, the project would then be consistent with all but one policy. In conclusion, the project is inconsistent with at least one applicable policy with or without recommendations, and thus the project cannot be found consistent with the general plan. The Commission can encourage but not require recommendations. The Commission can find conformance based on potential consistency with a majority of goals and policies. The county is not obligated to adhere to recommendations, and the county can proceed with acquisition and demolition whether the Planning Commission makes a finding of inconsistency. Staff's recommendation is to receive a report and adopt a resolution finding the conformance review is exempt from CEQA and determining acquisition of the land and demolition of the existing residential structure located at 1017 4th Street is not in conformance with the city's 2040 general plan. I have a suggested motion here, but I will stop screen sharing and allow for discussion. I believe the applicant agent is available via Zoom.
Thank you, Assistant Planner Melissa Smith, for that very interesting report. It's noteworthy that staff has usually worked with the applicants and worked out so many things that oftentimes project is completely consistent, and we're not in sort of a mixed bag, half consistency and half inconsistency like this. So this is interesting for the Planning Commission, and we're also aware of the working relationship with the city and the county, and it's interesting. I find this one intriguing. Are there specific questions first from planning commissioners for staff?
Was relocation of the structure considered and then ruled out? This one has kind of been kicking around for a while, and I'm not sure if it's been discussed.
Both relocation and rehabilitation are possible, but the county has not indicated that that is their intention.
A follow-up question is, I saw in the report, and I've been by the building. It's dilapidated and boarded up, and it looks a bit like an eyesore. But my question is this: per the Green Book values, is there evidence that the historic values are no longer present on this site? That the building is dilapidated enough that there's nothing left to preserve, or that those values have been compromised to a point where we no longer consider them a value?
There are two things I can speak to about this. Attachment 3 of the staff report was a memo from the Historic Preservation Commission in, I believe, 2018 or 2019, that stated that the structure is eligible and nothing has changed to make it ineligible. Additionally, the Cultural Resource Report conducted in January of 2019 stated that the structure has not received the appropriate historical stewardship over the last 45 years and has deteriorated substantially.
Do you know if the applicant plans to do an EIR for demolition, given that it's considered basically a significant resource?
I think if you refer to the letter that was sent with the application, they believe that it's not historic. Do you want to see if I'm right about that? I think if we look at looks like 14, page 86, but there's a letter from December 16th where the county, Sean.
I can reference the letter here.
Yeah,
if
you
you
want
like.
to talk about that?
It says here, this is the letter from the county. The subject parcel is not listed on Eureka's local register of historic places and does not appear to be eligible for the California Register of Historic Resources, nor would it be considered a historic resource under the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. Is that enough?
And that was a determination by the county or by the city? By the county. But from staff perspective, there's no evidence that the historic values are no longer present.
Yeah, like I said, this is listed as an eligible resource, but was never put on the registry. And so it wouldn't be, the project on site wouldn't be subject to needing review by the Historic Preservation Commission. Mm-hmm. But in the general plan, it is stated that any eligible resource needs to be held to our general plan goals and policies, which is why I included those in this staff report, if that.
And further, the cultural resource report that was done in 2019 actually recommended that the site go before the Historic Preservation Commission for their input. And the memo that was attached, I believe it's number 3 in your staff report, that memo is a result of that item being taken to them for comment.
So I understand that the county's not bound by recommendations that we would include. Are they bound by that we pinky swear it won't be a parking lot? Is there any teeth to that part of this?
That is in their letter, which is also attachment 2 to the staff report. They have stated that specifically in their letter for this conformance review.
But no, they're not bound by it.
Okay.
I think maybe another way of thinking about it is we're only being asked to make a determination about conformance with respect to demolition, and is there one other thing? I think that's it.
Acquisition and demolition.
Oh, acquisition and demolition. So that anything else beyond that is not on the docket tonight.
Not in our
Whether they
purview.
do pursue a parking lot or not isn't what they're proposing or what we're considering.
Okay, I would like to give the applicant, and I also see Director of Environmental Services from the county on the Zoom, and so I'd like to give the county and the applicant the opportunity to speak to this project as well. Go ahead, either of you could start.
Good evening, commissioners. Thanks for having us. I'm Sean Meehan. I'm the Deputy Director of Facilities Management for Humboldt County Public Works. I'm joined by my colleague Hank Seaman. He's the Deputy Director of Environmental Services for Humboldt County Public Works as well. I'd like to thank you guys for having us this evening, and I'd like to thank staff for their excellent and I think very thorough staff reports for both of the general plan conformance reviews that are on your agenda tonight. So the county approved a facilities master plan in 2020. And this plan is really oriented on the development of campus-like centers of government services throughout the county. Both projects before your commission tonight reinforce our master plan. We're excited to assist in the beautification and improvement of the city of Eureka. And with that said, I'd be happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Would you be able to speak to if relocation is an option that you'd consider if you were approached by an interested party?
We have not considered it here thus far. We believe that the cost of relocation would be significant. So if there was an interested party that could, address the cost issue, it would be possible, but without that, it would seemingly be not on the table.
Other commissioners have questions for county representatives?
Yeah, I guess I have a question about the determination in light of the Historic Preservation Commission's determination with respect to the structure's potential for significance. Is it the opinion of the county that this project is not subject to further environmental review and that an exemption would be appropriate for demolition as lead agency?
That's correct. And I can give a little background. Back in 2018, when the county was looking at a larger project, we were looking at a number of parcels on this block, and we retained Bill Rich and Associates to do a cultural resources assessment. And we also consulted with the city to verify the history of the different parcels. And so this parcel that we're talking about tonight is just one of, I think, 5 parcels that were looked at back then. And this particular one, I think back in 1973, a historic commission had recommended that it be, put on a local register. And then in 1996, the property owners, along with every other property owner who had property on that list, were given the option of opting out. And so they elected to do so. Those owners are still the current owners, and they've decided to, rather than invest in improving the property, they've decided to put it on the market, which they did earlier this year. And Bill Rich's report concluded that this particular property would not be considered historically significant based on state or federal standards, and that it would also, just because it's not on the local register, it would not be considered a historic resource under CEQA. Another point that I'll just clarify is that the letter from the city's Historic Preservation Commission, it did have a statement that there's no evidence that this property has lost the features that would qualify it for inclusion. But I think what that means is that no evidence was forthcoming to demonstrate that. It was not a statement that the property continues to contain those features that make it architecturally significant.
Thank you, Deputy
So it's
Director.
our understanding that the building is in pretty rough condition inside, and Bill Rich's report focused on the exterior features of the building and not on the interior features. So yeah, I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Yeah, Hank, I guess I'd ask you to the question of part 4 of, I'm looking at 15064.5 of the CEQA guidelines. You know, it does say that the fact that a resource is not listed in or determined to be eligible doesn't preclude, on a local register of historical resources, doesn't preclude a lead agency from determining that the resource may be a historical resource. So in light of what I'm hearing staff say is our general plan requires that we consider projects that are potentially eligible, whether they're opted out, like the landowner did in this case, and many have throughout the city, or not. And CEQA does have a requirement that the lead agency consider whether or not there is eligibility, and we have our expertise in our Historic Preservation Commission making a determination that they believe it does have eligibility. It has integrity, to be more clearly, which is debatable, you know, whether a structure has the condition or has lost its integrity. But in light of that determination, I just wonder how the county would make that call that it is not eligible when we have evidence to the contrary. I understand that the opting out occurred and it's not formally listed on the register at this time. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think if the city or another party came forward with affirmative evidence that you were prepared to put it on the list on your historic register, that would affect our considerations under CEQA. But right now, there's really no affirmative evidence that it's eligible.
Well, the
There's
eligibility,
a compelling reason to consider it.
the eligibility would be
historic.
the actual listing, or the eligibility was determined at the time of the citizen-led survey. It's really just, and in the opinion of the Historic Preservation Commission in 2018, the eligibility seemed to be still there. It's not that it's been formally listed, but the eligibility seems to be ratified by the Historic Preservation Commission in fairly recent years. Though I admit, you know, I'm sure it's in much rougher shape today than it was in 2018 when it was initially being taken before them. But that's, I think, the central question to me that isn't our responsibility tonight because we're not the lead agency. But because you are, and, you know, you will be taking that up, I guess I would suggest that you give some weight to that because they do seem to have a bearing. And I think to Commissioner Freitas's comments about relocation, I think those are an easy way to deal with the potential issues that arise with demolition if a suitable relocation site was found. And it also solves the housing compatibility issue that our staff has identified as far as the loss of housing units that are affordable within city limits. So those were my thoughts, at least.
Thank you, Deputy Director Seaman, for providing us some background. I have a more general question. You know, it is in our charge as a planning commission to make sure that there's community benefit to the city of Eureka for this and the citizens of Eureka. But because the scope of future development is really unknown, other than the demolition, what you plan to do there, it's hard for us to really evaluate the benefit, to our community. Can you speak? I'm not asking you to look too far into the crystal ball or make stuff up, but what do you think you might do there, or are potential projects for that site? Could you explain that to us a little bit better so we might be able to better understand what the benefit in the future might be?
Yeah, I think I can handle that one. So the reason this is a little bit of an unusual review is because the seller has insisted from day one on a very quick turnaround. They don't want to go through a lengthy process. So we are really motivated to acquire the property quickly. There were preliminary studies for a massing model for this location. Would be something in the realm of like a 4 to 6 story building, maximizing footprint on that site. And so, yeah, it's part of our long-term plan to move some of our programs and services out of the courthouse. This is the best location. It's very centrally located to other county programs and services. And so we would be maximizing footprint and developing a new structure, eliminating, I think, both structures. The neighboring public defender building is also in what I consider a tear down condition. And so I think that would beautify the neighborhood for sure and continue to provide services to Humboldt County residents.
Thank you. I'd like to move it, unless there are other questions directly for the county or staff from the commissioners, I'd like to invite public comment at this time. Are there any members of the general public that would like to speak to this project, either online or in the chambers?
Online. BPT still has their hand up, or has their hand up again. I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's not still. I know. I'm that guy. So this is so interesting. The county general plan to have a services hub is quite commendable. I really like the idea of people being able to have a one-stop shop for the county services they need. The city general plan is offended as planned or as proposed in 4 out of 8 conditions. Housing element in particular, we just saw at council the other day, Lundebar Hills expansion was opened up, but not funded or planned. The idea is to get external developers. That's not in the city center, it's on the periphery of the city, and it doesn't contribute to the livelihood of the city. So you're losing another potential house, albeit not a particularly desirable, in a desirable state of repair at the moment. That it's on 101 really limits what we can do from a pedestrian safety perspective. I like the statement that there would be no parking lot, and I believe that we can trust the honor of the current county officials making these assertions and guarantees, but I don't know what comes next. And what I hear is that when we allow the county to purchase this property, City of Eureka has no say in anything that goes on there afterwards. County gets to do what the county does. This idea of a 6-story building that moves a bunch of services out of the courthouse that doesn't really expand the number of daytime working folk who could potentially shop around the area for their lunchtime needs and the like. So I'm curious as to what would fill the space within the courthouse. And I think for me, most importantly, at the moment, I don't know our tax code, but I believe that most governments don't pay property taxes on the land that they have or the buildings that they have. The current owner presumably would, and so this may represent a loss of a small piece of tax base for the city. So, thanks for letting me gab at you.
Thank you for your public comments. I'll bring it back to the commissioners now for discussion. No one's jumping at the mic, so I see this as a one of these sort of necessary projects if we want to move things forward in the city, and the county is a fantastic partner with the city and has been for a long time, and even though we can't evaluate the long-term benefit of this to our community at present, it seems we can infer that there's going to be a certain amount of benefit. The loss by neglect of affordable housing However, I think that can be reversed, and I would, but I also think that consolidation of county services means that they may not have to acquire other properties that could also at some point be future housing, and the larger the building and the more centralized, the more it may help us meet, housing goals. So I don't see a compelling reason not to approve this in at least those parts that are consistent, and around the CEQA compliance piece of it. And I don't know, it seems like one of these rubber stamp motions, because in the end, the county's exempt from following any of our recommendations in the end. So, what are we stopping? What do we really have to gain here, one way or the other, is, I guess, my question for my fellow commissioners.
I think we can put some things in the record that will potentially cause the county to have to reckon with that in the CEQA realm. They ultimately are the lead agency, and they will make a determination whether we like their determination or not. But we do have the ability, just like the Historic Preservation Commission attempted to do, to signal that, in the opinion of the lead agency for land use in the city, this is our thoughts with respect to our policies. I do have a question for staff. So a private landowner proposes this exact same project to demolish this particular residence. What would the reaction be?
They would get a demolition permit from the building department.
And because it's not on the local register, there would be no further scrutiny given?
Correct, because our demolition permits in the inland portion of the city, at least, are ministerial.
Let's say that they propose to do something that would require discretionary review. So it was in tandem with that they were proposing demolition to prepare the site for some new use that would be subject to CEQA. Would we be looking at this building as a historical resource, or would we rely on the opt-out provisions of the historic preservation?
If the city were to have to undertake a discretionary review by a private developer who proposed demolition and some other discretionary review, then yes, that discretionary review would include a discussion of potential issues with the demolition of the structure. We would have included information from the applicant regarding the historicity of it. Perhaps would have spoken with the Historic Preservation Commission as we did on this one. I'm kind of just guessing because it's a what if, but
I guess to make it a little easier, let's say fork in the road, it either has integrity still and is potentially eligible for a listing, even though not listed, or it doesn't. And in the event that it doesn't, I think we know the outcome is it's not a big deal to demolish it.
That's correct.
But in the event that it was determined by a consultant or the commission or some hybrid of both, that would be something that I would think would require that as a lead agency we disclose that and mitigate to the extent feasible and potentially prepare an EIR.
That would be correct, yes.
Okay. So just wanted to go through that thought experiment because that's really kind of, to me, what the county should be taking note of, because just because they're the lead agency doesn't mean that they're not actually subject to considering all of those factors when making a determination ultimately. And so in our motion, we can signal that we believe, or we don't believe, depends on where everybody lands, that this building has historical significance and would be, lost, and as a result of any demolition activity.
There doesn't appear to be any interior photos, at least on the original listing for sale, that I could find when I was looking at it either. So I guess you have to trust that it is in total disrepair on the inside.
I mean, if they listed a house and didn't show any interior photos, that feels like a sign that it's probably not in very good condition.
Well, that's kind of what I thought too, yeah.
Yeah.
And based on its length on the market, especially in this time.
Yeah, I find this one a little bit convoluted. You know, I guess at the end of the day, they're not wanting us to tell them whether or not the structure is historic in our opinion. Like, we could do that, you know, but what we're trying to figure out is if it's consistent or not. And it seems like staff is saying they're not able to, you know, find a clear path towards consistency with all the general plan policy. And so that's really what we're being asked to do, is find it consistent or not. And, you know, so that's kind of two separate issues. And for the first one about the structure and how significant it is, I do find the letter that HPC wrote to be, it definitely kind of muddies the water. You know, it's pretty much in direct conflict to the county's letter, because it basically says the property at 1023 4th Street has been placed on the city's local register of historic places and has been officially recognized by the city of Eureka as historically and architecturally significant. And then the last point here, the commission recognizes the applicant, County Humboldt, is required to comply with state regulations, including CEQA. The commission requests the opportunity to review a copy of the environmental impact report once the report has been released. So, I mean, it seems like they're pretty clearly signaling they consider it significant and would consider demolition to necessitate an EIR, assuming, you know, they have enough of an understanding of how the processes work, and I think that they do. But on the other hand, you know, it's a sweet little house in a really terrible location. I don't think that, you know, keeping it, salvaging it, and putting our foot down on that would really be the best thing for Eureka either. And, you know, in terms of, you know, the second part about whether or not we can find consistency, the only thing we might need to change, you know, in all these recommendations that staff has put forward is a recommendation to, you know, pursue relocation instead of demolition, and then we might be able to find consistency with recommendations on all policies. Is that accurate? Kristen says no.
You would still have the issue of HCP, forgotten the number.
Is it 1.4?
Yes, thank you.
And can you remind the commission what that policy is? I thought that was the one about demolition, but I guess I was mistaken.
It is. Consider demolition of eligible historic resources as a last resort, to be permitted only if rehabilitation is not feasible. Demolition is necessary to protect health, safety, and or welfare, or the public benefit of demolition outweighs the loss of the structure consistent with city regulations.
Well, I think the point that I'm hoping, you know, could work is if we recommend relocation instead of demolition, similar to recommending, you know, part of the parcel be saved for housing. Potentially that could be close enough to consistent that we could change that piece of it. I mean, I don't see why not.
So I think the commission would have to find that I think in order to be able to find it, to make a consistency finding, all of the recommendations that we've indicated in the staff report would need to be made. We still believe that based on those recommendations that it would still be inconsistent with at least that one policy. A recommendation from the commission to the county to look at relocation would only make that policy consistent if they actually relocated the building. So if they looked at it and said, nah, we can't relocate it, nobody wants it, costs whatever, they would still be inconsistent with that one policy.
And that's, you know, similar with some of these housing policies too, though. If they decided to not set aside land, they would not be consistent.
Correct.
So it's kind of a gamble regardless, you know. And I think it's probably pretty safe to say that some of the recommendations that we make will not be followed, you know, because they're just recommendations and the county ultimately has the decision-making authority.
I would be interested in hearing a motion that incorporated some of what you have said. Commissioner Freitas, if you want to take a shot at it.
Okay, I'm gonna make a motion, and if there's further discussion, my feelings will not be hurt. If I don't get a second, that's fine. I move the Planning Commission adopt a resolution finding the conformance review is exempt from CEQA, and the acquisition of the land and demolition of the existing structure at 1017 Forest Street does conform with the city's general plan, including all staff recommendations. In addition, including a recommendation for the county to prioritize relocation of the structure as opposed to demolition. And if all recommendations cannot be made, then the project will not conform to the city's 2040 general plan.
That was pretty damn good.
I will second that motion for purposes of discussion. So we have a motion and a second. Further discussion.
I guess I just the only thing I'd say is I'd prefer that we support our Historic Preservation Commission and memorialize that in the opinion of the Planning Commission. And I don't know whether this is your feeling, but in the opinion of the Planning Commission, that the structure is eligible for listing on the local register and is a historical resource. I think in doing so, we put the ball in the county's court to prove otherwise as when acting as lead agency. And it is a little bit hard to know, but the inside of a building, if that was the test of whether something was historical, there would be a lot of buildings that are not on the register, and that are currently on the register. So that's somewhat of in most jurisdictions, including ours, a place where anything can happen, whether it's squalor or a crazy remodel that doesn't look anything consistent with what's on the outside. So to me, it's what I see on 4th Street that drives my opinion that I don't see a loss of integrity. I don't think that the building has lost its ability to be eligible. And I'm confident that it could be rehabilitated, but that's not the proposal. So in lieu of that, relocation is the next best option and would not result in an issue as far as I'm concerned. But
Well, I'm open to a friendly amendment if you have one to in some way support the letter that the commission drafted.
yeah, I think it would just be inserting language that the commission believes the structure is a historical resource pursuant to CEQA and is eligible for listing on the local register. Just in pushing that into the language of the motion that we already have would be enough for me, wherever it makes the most sense in this sentence. Does that make sense? I mean, as far as that clarification, it's not anything really related to the motion. It's just a kind of informational component.
If all the staff's recommendations are met, is it inferred that there was value, historical value, where we don't need to state it?
As somebody who splits hairs for a living, I don't feel that confident. No.
Well, it infers eligibility, but that's all it necessarily infers, if I'm understanding what staff provided in the report. I guess there's part of me that just wonders, what would really be the best outcome for the city if the county is able to have a streamlined pathway towards, constructing this new office building, providing more workers downtown, so on and so forth, versus keeping the block as it is now in terms of the historic and cultural value of that for the city. And that's, again, not what we're being asked to weigh in on here, but we could potentially put, more hoops in their path by adding that. I mean, I'm not sure if it would ultimately make a difference or not. But I guess that's sort of the question for the commission is it important enough to, to potentially open that box, that Pandora's box for them?
Yeah, I want to be clear that I think this is a good project. Other than I don't think the county's really taking to consideration the historical part of this element. It's a cost of redeveloping the site is finding a home for that building. That's all I think. I fully support putting more services in the central part of the city. I don't have any reservations about that. So to me, I just think it's an inconvenient historical building on a site that's not being fully utilized. And it's not the type of building that I would lose a lot of sleep over living somewhere else, whether in the city or somewhere else in the unincorporated areas of the county, frankly. It's just that to just not deal with that is, I think, inappropriate.
I think the motion as amended captures the spirit of us valuing the historic preservation piece of it, but also not standing in the way of being gatekeepers against progress that could benefit both the county and the city. So I'm inclined to support the friendly rewrite of Commissioner Freitas's motion. Any other comments on this? Do we have a more cogent version?
I was going to ask, if staff wants that amendment clarified, or if you feel like you've captured it.
I think I got it.
Okay.
Let me give it a shot here.
Thank you.
Hang on one moment. So the motion is to adopt a resolution finding that based on the Historic Preservation Commission's memo, the Planning Commission believes the structure is a historic resource and eligible for listing on the local register of historic places, and the acquisition of the land and development of an office building at acquisition and demolition of the property at 1017 4th Street does conform with the City of Eureka's 2040 general plan, provided the county incorporates all of staff recommendations and relocation of the building. And if this county does not incorporate any or all of the recommendations and relocate the building, then the project does not conform with the 2040 general plan.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would say is instead of any or all of the recommendations, it should just be all of the recommendations. But otherwise, that was perfect. Thank you.
Okay, we have it fresh in our heads, what it is we're voting. Is everyone ready to put this to vote? Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much, county staff, for being with us tonight and giving us clarifications. Yeah, one more, so don't turn off yet. We've got one more to go. Okay, our next one is item I3, General Plan Conformance Review for 3007 and 3015 I Street. Appears we'll have a staff report for that as well. So go ahead, staff, when you're ready.
Sure, yeah. Good evening, commissioners. This next general plan conformance review is for property located towards the center of the city at the, let me read my notes so I don't mess this up. At the southeast corner of Wood and I Streets, the parcel shares a block with medical offices and a church and the County of Humboldt's Clark Complex is located across I Street to the west, which contains a variety of county office facilities. And the block across Wood Street to the north is developed with single-family homes and ADUs, accessory dwelling units. The subject property is comprised of two 7,350 square foot parcels. The county proposes to acquire the property, merge the parcels, demolish the existing vacant residence on the northern parcel, and construct an office building with associated parking and landscaping. The county has provided 2 conceptual site plans for the new development, included in attachment 2 of your packet. This is the first one, and this is the second one. The county proposes an approximately 7,000 to 10,000 square foot 2-story building with 14 to 20 parking spaces, also short and long-term bicycle parking and landscaping consistent with the city's inland zoning code standards. The building will be used as a public health laboratory facility for the Department of Health and Human Services, or DHHS, to provide testing and support for community health providers and other area laboratories. They anticipate 15 to 20 employees will work in the building. DHHS's public health lab facilities are currently located at 529 I Street near City Hall. And according to the county, there are challenges to upgrading and adding services to the lab in its present location, which is another building owned by the county. Consolidating DHHS services around the Clark complex will allow them to be more efficient, which in turn, will result in better service for the public. As we just learned, California Government Code 65402 requires general plan conformance review for acquisition of property and also for construction of public buildings within city limits. And the question at hand is the location, purpose, and extent of acquisition and development in conformity with the city's 2040 general plan. So the proposed project is located in the professional office land use designation, and it is consistent with the use type and use intensity for that designation. It also furthers a number of other general plan policies about promoting infill, developing underutilized parcels, developing intersection corners with buildings instead of parking, supporting DHHS in their delivery of services, and ensuring there's review, comment, and coordination on plans affecting the city. And to that end, the county intends to voluntarily follow city zoning code standards and has participated in pre-application development review with city staff. And they have volunteered to seek feedback from the design review committee once they have design plans developed. Again, both of those would be voluntary. The project will result in the demolition of a residence built in 1930, but the structure is not on the local register or in the Green Book. And a historical evaluation report has been prepared indicating it is not eligible for listing. Thus, the historic preservation policies of the general plan do not apply to this project. However, the housing element goals do. In this case, it's less clear whether this is affordable housing because we don't know if it was ever rented at an affordable price, but it would be at least affordable for above moderate income households, earning 120% or more of the area median income. Therefore, the loss of the housing unit without a strategy for replacement is inconsistent with this housing element goal. Although staff believes the loss of the housing is regrettable and the county should consider on or off-site replacement housing, the overall benefit of the project for the community is a positive one and furthers a number of 2040 general plan goals and policies as further described in the staff report. Therefore, staff recommends the Planning Commission receive the report and adopt a resolution finding the conformance review is exempt from CEQA and determining the County of Humboldt's acquisition and development conforms to the general plan.
Thank you, Planner Kenyon. We appreciate the concise report, and this one is a lot less convoluted and much more straightforward, but I do want to offer the commission the opportunity to ask questions of staff on this one. Let's start there. Are there any questions?
I had one question. This is very close to where I work at the Clark Complex, so I'm familiar with the building, and I agree that it's unlikely to meet the test for historical. I guess one question I have, is just whether or not the county, and I think our representatives could speak to this, whether they've given any consideration to the fact that there's a pretty dense cell tower facility immediately adjacent to these parcels with multiple radome antenna arrays that are, there'll be a requirement to, well, there won't be a requirement. There's a requirement for the cellular operator to show that the resulting RF will not be endangering the public should they change the situations out at that site. But I think that it would be wise to give some consideration to exposure risk, given the proximity. It's less than, it's at the property line, the closest array. So has there been any discussion about that with the applicant or awareness?
No.
Okay. And maybe it's on their radar. No pun intended. Maybe not.
So if I could just add that wireless telecommunication facilities, or WTF as we refer to them, that finding would have been made when they were approved. Some of those had design review, some of those had use permits prepared for them, some of them had CEQA documents prepared, but all of the WTF permits would have the requirement that they provide information indicating that the potential emissions are within the levels that are allowed. So all of those WTF sites have achieved that requirement. And if they were to come in the future to make changes to the antenna or to the towers themselves that are there, that requirement would still be in place. They would have to consider the new building that was constructed next door and include that in their analysis.
Any other questions from seated commissioners? Okay, why don't we open this up to county representatives that are online. Just if you have any comments on this particular project, we can hear them now.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. No significant comments to add to the discussion here. Public health provides a really vital role for the county and is in dire need of a new facility. So when this opportunity came up, we jumped on it. County staff is aware of the adjacent cell phone antennas and is working with the current owner on an easement to address some of the service issues related to those as well. But yeah, nothing to add beyond that.
Thank you. Let's open it up to the general public now. Anybody online from the general public wish to speak to this issue, to this project? Seeing none, anyone in the chamber? Okay, can we see that motion again? I'm going to go ahead and make this motion, and then we'll still have time for the commission to have further discussion if needed. I move the Planning Commission adopt a resolution finding the conformance review is exempt from CEQA and the acquisition of the land and development of an office building at 3007 and 3015 I Street conforms with the city's 2040 general plan.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? I see a lot of heads shaking no. So let's go ahead and put it to a vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you very much, County, for helping our community so much.
Thank you all.
Okay, Let's move on quickly then to I-4, the draft bylaws. And I want to, before we do that, I just want to make a request that I was reviewing item J1 today, and I spent a lot of time at it, the Coastal Land Use Plan Document Review, Session 5. I'm going to ask that we put that off until the next planning meeting, because there's a lot of density in that one, and that we just deal with the bylaws tonight. I see a lot of people shaking their head yes on that. Would that be okay with staff for us to deal with that next time?
I believe we don't have a whole lot planned for next agenda, so
Yeah.
if Kristen,
This was a pretty packed agenda tonight, so.
yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it. So then the draft bylaws. Is there going to be a presentation on that, or is it just questions from us to you on that?
It's just a verbal one. And I do, now that I'm looking at the bylaws in your packet, I do have to apologize because the track changes that I put in there are not showing for you. So basically what it does, all of the changes were to the first page and the second page. The first page, we updated the amended date. We updated the mayor and the new council members under that section. Updated the planning commission members from the last time, and also updated development services planning staff. And on the second page, we added in the 13th amendment with today's date, assuming that the commission would adopt these bylaws. No other changes to the text of the bylaws were proposed. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, that was my main question. It was all very clear and acceptable, but I wasn't sure what had been revised or amended.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, thank you, and I'm glad it was little. I do have one question on Article 5, elections and appointments, and mostly maybe I missed it, but it just wasn't clear to me any statement about how commissioners are appointed. There was a lot about how we develop, we can create committees and appoint people to sit on those committees. Is it appropriate in these bylaws to have some language somewhere about how commissioners are appointed?
That actually comes from the municipal code, and it's in chapter 152, I believe. Talks about that the city council appoints commissioners.
So that's elsewhere and doesn't need to be part of this.
Correct, yes. These are the rules and the procedures once you're appointed to the commission on how you run your meetings and how we provide agendas and projects to the commission.
One thing I thought might be, seems like we've entered the Zoom age, and maybe bylaws everywhere should be reflective of that, but I didn't have any profound ideas about how that would occur, but maybe the next go around might be something we can.
So the city has been operating under an order from the state of California, and I think it was 316 was the number for it, which allowed during the pandemic and subsequently for hearing bodies to hold public hearings without having a quorum in the room, without posting agendas if members were Zooming in from some other location. However, that allowance, we understand, is going to be ending in February. We haven't exactly figured out yet what the requirements are going to look like. Are we going back to just the way it was, where everybody needs to be in the room, and if you're not here, then you're not participating in the meeting, or are there going to be some provisions? So once we figure that out, we will certainly be happy to take a look at the bylaws and see if we need to make any updates. But at this point in time, my recommendation would be that we just leave it as it is right now.
Thanks for bringing that up, Commissioner Lazar. Also, just in trying to modernize language, my general comment is that I saw a lot of his and her, very, binary language. And I'm wondering if the city in this document or in other documents is starting to consider, updating to his, her, and their, and just acknowledging and affirming some of the other gender identities being acknowledged and lived and celebrated at this time, or whether we're going to continue to just keep things, his or her. Any comment on that?
I would be happy to make that update and bring this back to you at your next meeting if you would like, or we could save it for the next time we adopt bylaws, whichever you prefer.
I guess it brings up a more general question, when changes are made like that and then they start to filter into documents around a city, I don't know if it all happens all at once and someone spends the time doing that, or whether you just do it in a piecemeal fashion. And I see you shaking your head that this is done in a piecemeal fashion. And so that would be my recommendation, is that here's an opportunity to start updating language into the way that we conceptualize gender now.
I'm happy to take this back and look at making those changes and bring you back with track changes showing next time.
His,
so you can
his
see
her,
those.
and there would be great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. So thanks for bringing that up.
Any other comments on the bylaws from commissioners for staff?
I don't have any. And I just wanted to say, though, before we adjourned or came close to it, since this is the last item, I see that we have Jen Kalt here, and I'm assuming she was here for the LCP item. I wonder if, just as a nod to her, since she sat through a few hours of us talking about other things, if we could open the item, allow her to give comment, and then close it, and then wait and have the actual deliberation at our next meeting. Is that possible? Just out of respect for her time.
I would support that if that's something we're allowed to do, or does it have to be noticed?
I think if you chose to do that, you would have to ensure that whether there are any other people that wanted to provide comment on that tonight. Also, whether it's better to wait until after the presentation has been given to provide comments so that the comments are relative, maybe a consideration.
Okay. I didn't see that we had received a letter from Baykeepers relative to this. So Jen Kalt, we're trying to respect you here, and thank you, Commissioner Freitas, for opening that up. But it might be better for you to hear the staff report before providing comments. Would that be acceptable to you?
Yes, hi. Thank you for that. I was watching on my other computer, and I think there's a little time delay, so I hope I wasn't late coming to this computer. Yeah, I don't really have anything to say at this time, but I really appreciate that. So you're putting it off till next meeting, is that right?
Yes.
I missed the first half hour of the meeting. Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry to keep you waiting for all this time.
Oh, it's fine. I was just making dinner and stuff.
Okay. All right. Very
Have a good evening.
Thank you. Okay, let's, I don't see any other reports or communications. Does anyone on the commission wish to make any reports or communications? Ex parte?
I have a report or a
Okay.
communication, but
Okay.
it was not on my plan until I arrived at the meeting. I got here earlier than normal, and I discovered the doors were locked at 5 o'clock or 5:02 or whenever I got here. So I was able to get in. Someone saw me outside and let me in. But when I got up here, I was told that the doors are locked until 5:15 to deal with something about the finances or something. Yeah. So I guess in my mind, I found that to be a little bit problematic, just in the sense that if somebody arrives and maybe they've never been to a planning commission meeting before and the doors are locked, they think that signals, oh, I guess the meeting's not happening. I'm here at City Hall, but yeah. And I thought, well, maybe there's another way we could approach it. There's a lot of different ways, like letting the public know, having a sign on the doors will be open at 5:15 or something on the night of a planning commission meeting. I'm not sure, but to me it seems a little, especially if we move out of the Zoom age, as might occur, to be open, have our doors as open as possible, literally and figuratively, to people attending meetings. So I don't know. I just wanted to talk about that because it seemed to me like there was some room for improvement.
I agree. I've also come before 5:15 and had Jessica come at 5:15 and say, remember 5:15. So I'm reminded that I shouldn't come earlier than 5:15, but it's taken me a few times to learn that, and a member of the general public might feel, I mean, I look back at my phone, do I have the right day? You know, so certainly a member of the general public might wonder if they're in the right place and at the right time. So I think a sign would be, you know, council chambers will open back up at 5:15. You know, some kind of a sign would be appropriate and kind.
And even maybe in the public notice for the meeting, it just as an easy, you know, the city hall is open at 5:15 for for people attending the meeting. And most people probably won't see the notice, but those that do might pick that up.
How do those two items sound to staff? The notice, putting in the notification of the meeting that,
Or the agenda. Or whatever.
yeah, the agenda that it starts, that the building's open at 5:15, and then there also being some kind of a placard that's hard copy.
Yes, so the agenda currently talks about that the doors will be unlocked for at least 1 hour after the meeting begins, so that the custodial staff can lock it and get about their business. I'm happy to change that to just indicate that the building will be open no later than 5:15.
Thank you so much.
For the city council, do the doors lock an hour after the meeting, or can people just come in whenever? It would kind of make sense to leave the doors open for the entirety of the meeting.
So we have usually a police department here for that meeting who monitors the lobby and the folks who come into the meetings. We don't have that for the planning commission.
Yeah, I wish there was a way to like provide a number, because I could totally see somebody just coming for their item, you know, and then being locked out. Like, that seems kind of, especially if they couldn't do Zoom, it would be good to consider ways to make sure they could gain access. I could see that happening myself, I guess. I'm thinking about myself being like, I'm just going to come late for my item and being locked out.
I don't think this is an item that we need an answer on, but for your consideration. You know, I mean, our goal is to make it easy for the public to come and participate, and so anything that we can do to do that's, you know, doesn't have a huge cost impact.
Yeah. I'm happy to share your comments with our community services department, who is in charge of building facilities and that kind of thing. So we will share that with them and let you know if there's any response.
Thank you.
Great. All right. I think we'll move right to item L, adjournment.
Just one thing, hold on. Sorry, I know I'm gonna have to struggle through my voice. But I did spend today in Rio Dell working at a hot meal center. And it was suggested to me that I just bring this up, that there is information that needs to be shared, that people aren't aware of what's going on in Rio Dell, and that there's now over 100 red tagged buildings down there, over 500 people displaced. They displaced a red tagged an apartment building while we were there. But the Office of Emergency Services and Humboldt Maid are providing hot meals also in Eureka and Trinidad and Big Lagoon. And they're just really encouraging people to share that information as much as possible. There's just a lot of trauma down there that I wasn't aware of. And I was kind of shocked to watch people cry and hug me that I don't know and give me their stories. So just to encourage you guys to share that information to your places of work and on any of your social media. Anyway, I promised that I would mention that.
Thank you for doing so. Yeah. All right. We are adjourned. Thank you all.